Geico presents Our Town, Season 4, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town, and this is sort of like Nostalgia Day for me and for Janice and for Ken, because one of our great, and I mean that, great friends from the early days of the success of the greatest radio station in the world was a young man named Bob Milkovich, who I had heard of and discovered when he was a quarterback for the University of Maryland. Len Klumpus told me about him. At the same time, he had us hire Ken Beatrice. He came down from Boston. And Bob Milkovich, welcome to Our Town.
Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Janice. It's so good to be here, and I feel so welcomed. I'm back in a place that I called home back in the early 80s when I first came here as a college intern. And, from
the University of Maryland.
University of Maryland. I actually was introduced to the station by Johnny Holiday. So there's
we're all in this thing together. Before that, there was, what's his name, honey? From the University of Maryland.
Tim Brandt?
Tim came here, but the athletic director...
Russ Potts was a big promotional guy.
Potts. He was a promoter,
Russ
wasn't
Potts.
He
He was a big promoter, and, he always had promotional campaigns well ahead of his time. I mean, some of the people we were talking about earlier, Andy.
Oh, my God.
Everybody was kind of ahead of their time.
I kept asking how he got to be an athletic director. But Dick Dell, all those people were friends of ours, Bob. But Milkovich is here because we're so excited. He has become and just been named the president of the Rand Company, which for Washingtonians, that those of us that know about it, is great position, and great for Bob Milkovich to run this company.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I'm honored. Linda Rabbit.
She's a wonderful woman, Bob.
She is, and I enjoy working with her, and she is so talented, and her community involvement is above everybody's standard.
I started with Linda. She went to college with some friends of mine. They went to the University of Michigan, and they were all in the same sorority. So I go back to her with the early 80s, about your time, as a matter of fact, when she worked for Steve Harlan. Mm-hmm. She was Steve's assistant well before she got into the building trades. But Linda is a magnificent example of a female that really made it big. And she was doing it back in the early 80s when not many other females were doing what she was doing.
That's right. And, back at...
Starting her own company, Bob.
She did. And, after I left radio, I actually went to work with the Oliver Carr Company, which I'm sure you know Oliver well.
Oliver T. Drive.
Oliver T., yeah. He's very civic-minded and quite a visionary.
Ollie, great guy.
And, interestingly enough, the intersection of all of us... Linda, actually, one of her first major clients was the Oliver Carr Company, where she started doing interior construction for the company. So
she was redecorating offices, I called it.
That's right, and building them out, and that kind of just
started the whole thing of a female taking over and being so important for our town, and did a lot of offices and a lot of friends. But because of Linda's involvement in the community, she knew so many people that were on their way up. By that, I mean they were getting bigger. And they all needed office work. And she stepped right up and supplied it to them.
That's right. And, Andy, I know you've seen the city grow over the last many years. And what we see, the old commercial corridor of Connecticut and K got expanded into the East End when Metro came online. And, everything that moved between the White House and the Capitol, it was just amazing what was going on.
Bob, it's so inspiring to see what's happened to our downtown. Yesterday, I had to ride down to 14th and F. I don't even know it anymore. That used to be the center of the universe, 14th and F.
Right.
Garfinkel's on one corner, and the Capitol Theater was the Capitol at one time, Fox Capitol. That was the center of town. Now it's nothing.
Yeah, well, think about it. I grew up locally, and
you're in Montgomery County.
Montgomery County, yeah, Rockville, Maryland. And when people came, even in after college, when people come to Washington, D.C., either try to move. If you're into politics, you move to Capitol Hill, or you move to Georgetown, or you move to DuPont Circle. Those are really the three neighborhoods that you would hear about. And now today, you have the 14th Street corridor, you have the 7th Street corridor, you have Shaw, you have, Union Market that's on the other side of Union Station. I mean, our city and, 8th Street corridor goes on the Wharf, this project, the Wharf, the ballpark. I mean,
the Yard. It's all down there, Bob.
Yeah.
You know, Ollie Carr was at the center of that when it first started. That growth, Ollie Carr was trying to be very helpful for us to get a baseball team. He and Jim Clark.
Yes.
They even went with us to a meeting with the baseball owners in New York, which Mr. Cook declined to attend, but Ollie did, and Jim Clark made a great impression. We didn't get the franchise, but we eventually we were trying to get a expansion franchise. Eventually, they pulled it off to move Montreal.
Yeah.
So, Bob, we've become a sports town. All big four sports are right here in our town.
And think about that. You know, what Abe Poland did with the Caps and what were the Bullets and now the Wizards, to put that right at 7th Street.
You've seen that neighborhood.
And it's just gone just fantastic. And you look at what the Learners have done with the Nationals and the ballpark area. You know, Andy, it's funny. I think back to the mid-'80s when I was here in WMAL. Of course, they covered Maryland football and they covered the Redskins. We were the flagship station. We had everything. And that RFK Stadium, you know, when it really got rocking and it would just kind of trampoline effect, it would go up and down. The crowd was wild. And we were playing for the big Super Bowl every year. It was fantastic. It really was.
Yeah, the town was so turned on to the idea of the Redskins. As Janice, she was a producer, as you know, my Janice Iacona, but she produced a lot of the football and a lot of the pregame shows. One of the things that Janice always was impressed with was the chemistry between the audience and the football team, all due to WMAL, because they were listening. People would go to the game carrying a transistor radio.
Well, I hate to confess to that too. Many times, and many of my friends, we would all, we would turn off the TV sound and turn on the radio sound, because you had Sonny, Sam, and Frank, and they were it. They were everything. And you look at what the Capitals did last year, and I think that really galvanized the city too. I mean, we saw kind of a rebirth of what we used to see with the Redskins.
Absolutely.
With what the Caps did last year.
And I think that what the Leonsis did is turn this town on by opening it up to the world. That downtown party, Bob, I don't think I've ever seen anything better than that.
I have not either. And I mean, I remember the bus parades that used to happen with the Redskins, but that really was, you think about how it brought people together, and it's just fantastic to see.
And the thing that, Abe started it, as you say, downtown, but everybody jumped on it. He had a lot of help. And, we had Irene on with our program, Irene Poland. And she lived through that, like you're talking about, the magic of the city when they won that one championship with the Bullets. But they felt it. And we felt it every year with the Redskins because they were going to be a contender, Bob, as you point out. But to see this involvement that you have and had, and Linda Rabbit has, and Ollie Carr has with our town, it's been great. Through the Board of Trade, they get the credit now about it.
Yeah, Andy, I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have come here and worked and met people like you and Ernie Fears and Tony Renaud at WMAL. And then I went, what I would call from the flagship radio station to the flagship developer. I went to work for Oliver Carr Company. We were the most prolific developer in Washington, D.C. I mean, really owned the town. And Jim Clark was a part of that too.
A Maryland guy too.
Absolutely. And then, my career, I was able to go and work for Goldman Sachs, which is a really top flight company. And then from there,
that was not a national job, wasn't it, Bob? Well, you're still here for Goldman.
It was more regional, but I was centered here and really doing a lot of work up and down the East Coast. And then from that, I went to First Potomac Realty Trust, which is here in Washington, D.C., a local REIT. And then now I'm with Rand Construction and Linda Rabbit.
What a career.
I mean, for me personally, I feel like I've, played for all the top teams in the city, if you can think about it that way. I mean, and the people that I've met through this has, it's made my life just that much more enjoyable. It really has.
Some of the people that you and I both know that you were involved in, Steve Harlan, I don't know whether you knew him well. But
I do.
Steve's a great guy.
Fantastic.
We love Steve, and I've had a great relationship with him since he first came to Washington. And I met Linda through him. In fact, he and Charlie Brotman, believe it or not. Oh,
God. So Charlie was, so when I first came here, I joked with Andy walking around the station today, I'll never forget on the FM side, they gave me a typing desk, which at my size, I could barely get my knees under the desk. Then they threw the yellow pages at me and they said, hey, good luck, go make some business. And, I'm fresh out of college. Today I don't even think they have, the typing desk. Half the people listening probably don't even know what that is. And yellow pages too.
That's exactly right.
You Google everything, but the thing that I remember, two things I remember most, Andy, I have to tell these stories real quickly, are one is that when I first came here as an intern and I saw you walking down down the hall. I think you're in tennis whites and
Could
a
have
tennis
been. With
racket.
Ernie.
Yeah, with Ernie Fears. And I looked and I said, who is that guy? And they said, oh, he runs the place. I said, this is where I want to work, you know. They play tennis every day for a sports guy. This is perfect, you know. And then the second part of it, when I was an intern, the only kind of fancy clothes I had was a tweed sport coat, you know. And as you know, a summer intern is truly summer in Washington, D.C. And I'd wear that sport coat, that tweed coat, and sweat my way to work. And you and Ernie Fears and Tony
But it worked
Renaud.
for you. You had a job.
I did. You guys must have felt so sorry for me because they gave me a blue blazer. And, you know, I'm so frugal, I probably still have it today.
And you can bet your life we didn't pay cash for it.
No doubt, no doubt. That was found somewhere as a promotional item. It was a promotional item from somewhere. You
Well,
know.
we've had a wonderful conversation about your business career and somewhat about WMAL, but we're going to take a break now, Bob, and give you a deep breath because we're going to talk about Bob Milkovich and his career as a quarterback for Maryland.
Technology Truth, brought to you by Geico.
Technology Truth.
Truth, you have 14 login passwords, and you can't remember any of them.
Doug 1. Doug 2. Doug is awesome. Doug is awesome 1, 2, 3.
Truth, it's so easy to switch and save on car insurance at geico.com.
Doug is super cool &% underscore exclamation point 1985. Knew it.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This is attorney Mike Collins. Come to my seminar and I'll explain in plain English all you need to know about wills, trusts, taxes, probate, and how to keep your money in your family. I'll show you how to eliminate those dread death taxes and avoid the expense and delay of probate. See how our reservoir trust can protect your family's inheritance from lawsuits and the divorce court. Thousands of your neighbors have already attended. So watch the mail for your special invitation and register now at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Our Town. It's Andy Ockershausen with a very, very dear friend and such a special person, Bob Milkovich. Obviously, Linda Rabbit recognized how good you are. You wouldn't have gotten a job because she is very particular. I've known that woman for many, many years. So, Bob, but way back, before you were at WMAL, you were University of Maryland quarterback for the Terrapins. That was quite a deal in our marketplace.
Yes, back in the day, you know, Coach Claiborne came in to build the program, and he really created a winner.
Did he recruit you?
He did. He and a gentleman named Joe Krivak, who ultimately became one of the head coaches there. But, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Rockville, Maryland. I went to Thomas Wooten High School, and, you know.
Wooten? That's a new school then.
Well, it was new when I was there. My brother was in the first graduating class, and but, you know, it was interesting back then. I got recruited by a lot of schools, and I looked at a lot of different situations. But back then, Andy, you played for your school. You played for your town, your state. And it was an honor to do that. It really was.
Oh, for Maryland, absolutely.
Oh, and as I mentioned, we were winners. We were top 15 team every year. We went to bowl games when bowl games mattered, right? There weren't, 500 by.
Yeah, but good bowls. You went to Oranges and Sugars. It meant something, right?
That's right.
Big deal.
We were in the bowls when it really was important to go, and we really had a good team. And I made some great friendships out of that experience.
Well, Maryland, they always had great offensive line. I knew so many of the older players that were old, like Harry Bonk and some names out of Maryland history that are incredible. We watched Maryland be built up because I was telling our technician, our most important guy in the room, that Bud Wilkinson was the head coach at the University of Maryland after WW2 before he went to Oklahoma. And then they hired Jim Tatum. And Maryland was a powerhouse.
Yes, Maryland was in the 50s, and then, it kind of took a little bit of a dip. And that's when they brought Coach Claiborne in. He had a reputation for turning teams around. He was a strict disciplinarian, which, it
helps to win.
Yeah, it absolutely helps. And he was very defensive and special teams minded. So he really did a great job.
Well, how about the quarterback club that he established? I mean, at one Sunday in pro football, Maryland had 5 or 6 starting quarterbacks.
Oh, absolutely.
On one Sunday.
Our group, Andy,
it's
really interesting, even more toward my senior year. Boomer Esiason was part of our the quarterback group. Norman J. Esiason. Frank Reich, who is now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts and just came off of
did a great job,
banner year, and Stan Gelbaugh was part of it. Stan played for 12 or 14 years professionally, and the list goes on. From there you had a fellow named Milanovic, a little bit different than Milkovich, but same, and Zolak, who went to the Patriots, and there really was a list of quarterbacks.
Where are the Milkovich bloodlines from?
It's Eastern European. It's Serbian.
Do you have relatives still live in Serbia?
I probably have a few over there somewhere.
I think it's wonderful. Everything going on over there. It's the tourists. The tourists are flocking to old Yugoslavia.
But you know what? When immigrants came to this country back in 1917, as my grandparents did, it was an honor to be an American and be an American citizen, to have a job, and to work. And that, and that work ethic got transcended down through generations.
So
I learned from my dad. My dad was, a very earnest, hardworking guy, and
was he from Rockville too?
No, actually from the Pittsburgh area. So my mother and father were from Pittsburgh areas.
Wow.
A lot of.
But you weren't born in Pittsburgh.
No. I was actually born in Endicott, New York. Our family, my dad was an IBMer, which he used to affectionately say was, "I've been moved." So, he started out, he was in the Pittsburgh area, and then he went,
Tim Brandt's father was an IBMer, too.
Yeah, I would bet you that the IBM tree for business community in Washington, D.C. is pretty robust.
Well, in my era growing up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, IBM guys were recognized. They all had to wear hats. Did you know that?
Well,
it was required by Mr. Watson that they all wear a hat.
Yeah, my dad would say you had to wear a white dress shirt every day except Friday. You could wear a solid blue one. That was like really casual Friday back then or something. Where today, you go to a business meeting. I mean, I might be the only guy in the room with a tie on.
I see it all the time, Bob. But you look good in it.
Well, as I told you earlier, this is a rental, so if we don't get this interview over early, I'm going to be out of clothes.
So these quarterbacks at Maryland made such an impression upon the National Football League because it was like quarterback college, and I think that's true for a while, and then things changed, Bob, because the quarterback position changed. Everybody's run and shoot now.
Well,
they do more shooting than they do running.
Yeah, and when you look at it, there are approximately 65 to 70 plays that are run from scrimmage. So when you look statistically on the TV and you see somebody threw 55 times in a game, I mean, that lets you know how many times they're running the ball, and it's not very much. So the game is definitely advanced. The athletes are so much, they're stronger, they're bigger, they're faster.
Training, Bob. Yeah, the menus are better. The nutrition is better.
Absolutely. Going back to Maryland, again, reflecting on that, Coach Claiborne was one of the first innovators of weightlifting.
Is that right?
We had a
weight room.
We had a very disciplined weight program.
He was after Bob Ward. Bob Ward's era, they were all tough guys. And they hired him for Hocus, New Jersey, Pittsburgh. The Modulewski brothers.
Absolutely.
They were tough when they came to school.
Well, the real guy that set the bar for Maryland and weightlifting, that was Randy White, who had a phenomenal career in college, Outland Trophy winner. Then he went on to the Dallas Cowboys and had a long
54.
Yeah, had a long career, and he really.
I think he still lives in the Dallas area.
He lives somewhere down there.
I was with Ernie Fears one time. We met and we went to some kind of reception with him in Dallas. I recall that vividly.
A mutual friend of ours and teammate keeps up, and Tim Brandt. I do see Timmy, and
oh my God,
he was a Maryland football alum and just a wonderful guy.
Timmy, he was working with Hardin Weaver doing sports.
Yeah,
and he came to me one day and said, "I had an offer from Channel 7. They want me to do the evening sports, and I don't want to leave, but I don't know what to do." I said, "Well, Tim, you do what your heart." But you're making a mistake. You're going to end up as a broken-down guy in Indianapolis, Indiana, or Frankfort, Kentucky, or someplace like that that people don't even know because you're not going to make it in television. He took the job, and then one day I got a phone call from Tim, and he called and he said, "I'm in Louisville. I'm doing the Kentucky Derby for ABC."
Yeah.
He just shot right up, as you know.
Yeah.
He's such a sweet, sweet man.
Yeah, well, with the exception of that, Andy, I would say you were a pretty quick judge of talent.
Well, he was great on the air. We didn't want to lose him because he was great. Frank and Jack loved him. Hardin and Weaver had, and Janice knows that she was a producer, they had likes and dislikes in the staff. When they liked the guy or gal or whatever it is, they push it. But if they didn't, if they were a little cooled off, you were dead meat. But they loved Timmy, and they didn't want him to leave. So like they all loved you, Bob, and that you had a unique opportunity to work with one of the great talents I've ever known in my life. And Janice and I went to his funeral, and it was so important that we do that. Ed Walker was a
Yes.
special talent.
Yeah, so as a young person and working at the radio station, I would come in on Saturdays and sit in with Ed on his show, with Sinatra and Friends, which Tony Renaud kind of started and got it all hopped up, and then Ed really was the talent to the, and I'll never forget they had some contest where I guess you go see Frank Sinatra, Madison Square Garden or something like that, and they said,
Mr.
Bob,
S.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
Tony called him Mr. S.
And so they said, Bob, would you go up there with Ed, and accompany him? And, that really was a fond memory for me. Because
my.
Ed Walker was such a talented guy, and he was an even nicer guy than he was talented, which is hard to believe. Yeah. And
But I believe what you're saying is true. To do the things that they did, that Ed did, not being able to see, was incredible. But he saw so well, Bob. That's what got me.
Yes.
He was just great with that Braille thing he had.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to mention this too. I would sit there in the studio with him. I'd say, "Hi, how you doing? What you do? Whatever." He said, "Well, I watched this movie last night," and he'd just keep talking. And I'm thinking to myself, "Watched a movie?" I'm like, "Wow!" But his awareness of what was around him was really impressive.
Winning awards, but there would never be another person like Tony Renaud. But I know he was real. He said, "Come on, we're going down to say hello to Mr. S."
Yeah.
At the hotel in Washington. He was here for inauguration or something.
Yeah.
And we go down and go in a room, and we're sitting off to the side, and Mr. S comes by. He did like Tony, though.
Oh, yeah.
Frank Sinatra liked Tony Renaud, but Frank Sinatra Jr. loved Tony Renaud.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what Tony taught me, and you know Tony very well, was the importance of relationships.
It's all about that.
And when you think about people like Charlie Brotman, who I know is a friend of
God.
yours, and Tony said, "Okay, I'm going to give you this client. It's Charlie Brotman. You better take care of the, I'm 20, 21 years old, whatever. I didn't know, but the importance of relationships. And
Our town, Bob. That's what it's all about.
And I've taken that forward in my career. I really have. I learned an important lesson here.
Well, you were talking about Linda Rabbit.
Yes.
The relationship. I know when she was assistant to, she was not anything really in the world, but
Steve
she
Harlan,
made
right?
herself into it because of her friendships with people.
Right.
Board of Trade, and all the people she knew. And you're doing the same thing, Bob. It's all about relationship. We used to sell broadcasting based on our relationship. We didn't care about the ratings. We had them, but we did it because people liked us.
Yes.
And the audience liked us, and the audience put up with us. And Janice will tell you all the work she did and doing that show with Hardin and Weaver in the morning. The whole market just rose up. They were so happy.
Oh, well, I think I mentioned this to you earlier. My peer group, my age group, every one of us, our parents had a radio on in the morning, and it was Hardin and Weaver. So the first day I came here, and I, would come to work early, and I would see those guys behind the microphone. I mean, I thought this was the biggest thing in America that happened to me. I was like, oh my God, that's Hardin and Weaver, and they were so funny. Those guys were so talented. It's really been a great experience. And Andy, I did want to say to you, you talk about our town, and when I was with Oliver Carr Company, one of the opportunities I had to kind of move up my stature in the company was I had to move out of the market. And when I went to Tom Carr and I said, Tom, I'd really like to move up in the company. And he said, well, you have to move out, and you'd never do that. You're from here. I said, try me. And I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona for 3 years. I worked in Denver for an additional 4.5 years.
All for Carr Company?
Yes, when the company went national. But I have to tell you, Andy, I always hankered to get back to D.C.
This is our town, Bobby.
It is.
You're one of us.
And what we've seen and the relationships, you cannot replace those relationships. They're just so important.
Well, one of the things that I learned in the early days was I worked for a guy that used to do the morning show named Jim Gibbons. And Jim Gibbons was all about relationships, and he taught me that. This is like the early 50s, and I'm meeting people through him that became the bank presidents, and and you always were involved because this was our town. It was a small town, but still the capital of the world. But it was our town.
But Andy, another thing that I saw from you as well, and I try to keep that too, is that you never forgot where you came from either, and that's
13th and D Northeast.
I
couldn't forget it.
It's just wildly important that you never forgot where you came from. You
Ride
never
the
forgot
streetcars, Bobby.
those old friends, and that and with relationships, and relationships are a fine art. You got to work at them. You got to put the time and the effort in. And today's fast-paced world, that gets lost a little bit.
Well, the people that help you in your career, but nobody's better than Johnny Holiday, Tim Brandt. I mean, they give of themselves. You know that Johnny still entertains, as you know. He's still a song and dance man.
I know. I'll never forget that. It was press day at University of Maryland football. Johnny says, "What are you doing?" I said, well, I'm getting a business degree, and I'm trying to get a second degree in RTVF, which was radio, television, and film back there in Maryland when, Jim Henson and Connie Chung and people like that had gone through that program.
What is his name, Batka or something like that? As a professor at Maryland? Batka?
Yeah.
Somebody we work with there.
Yeah. And then, so I said, I'm trying to do this, Johnny. I said, you have anything down at the radio station? And I think he said, he had somebody drive Andy Ockershausen around, but I figured John Butler had that covered.
My John.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm joking about that part, but
No,
Johnny was the introduction, sent me down here, and I'll never forget, I never forget that, and I appreciate that.
As long as he's driving, I'm working.
Yeah, that was funny.
We had a good combination with John Butler.
Yeah.
But everybody here was important to me, and from the top to the bottom. And this is our town, and I'm talking to Bob Milkovich, who's a fountain of information. And this is Andy Ockershausen. We'll be right back.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell you about Tony and Joe's and Nick's Riverside Grill at Washington Harbor in Georgetown. Spectacular new restaurants. We've spent a lot of time rebuilding. You'll love it. It's really fantastic. For any information, you can go online to tonyandjoes.com. It'll be a wonderful experience for the whole family. Call 202-944-4545 to make reservations. Everything is fabulous. You've got to come down and have some wonderful food.
Hi, I'm Charles Mann. For athletes like me, playing every down in a pro game is like getting in a car accident. After years of playing football in Washington, my body is broken. I've had countless surgeries and joint replacements. I've been looking for a non-surgical treatment since I ended my career. I heard a radio ad for a seminar about alternative treatment. It's called regenerative medicine, which stimulates your own body to heal and repair itself. No surgery, no more pain. That got my attention. I went to a seminar to learn firsthand all about it. Now you too can benefit and receive this treatment. This is the same procedure that pro athletes use to quickly and effectively recover from injury. If you're looking to eliminate your pain and arthritis, or if you thought surgery was your only option, take the first step like I did. Call 410-787-7250. Register for the next seminar and learn more about this breakthrough procedure. Seating is limited. Register now by calling 410-787-7250 and start living life again.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
This is Our Town, Andy Ockershausen, and having a wonderful conversation with not a very dear friend, but a man who's done it the hard way. He worked to get where he is, the president of the Rand Company. And this is, Bobby, you've seen Our Town now. And from your perspective as a young man, a student, an athlete, a part of a major company, can you believe the changes we've had, Bob?
I think it's utterly amazing. I mean, back to 1980 when the Metro came in, the core of Washington, D.C. moved from Connecticut and K Streets down to where Metro Center is today. So that was one major change that really took a long time to affect, but it affected our city.
Abe helped with that by building
absolutely
his building right down there.
I would say the second thing that I see, you mentioned where you grew up in town, but more people are moving into the city. The urbanization trend is real, and it's in Washington D.C. And the amount of people that are coming from outside of our area, not just for politics, but for private sector business, and is amazing. And we've seen all these neighborhoods sprout up. And there have been more apartments that have been built over the last several years. And it's just been, and because of that, it helps all the retail offerings too, all the restaurants. When the people come, the merchants come because they want to serve them. The grocers come. And we were never, one could argue this because there were some great places like Duke's Ebert's and certainly the Palm and the Prime Rib that are still going today, and they are institutions. But, the food offering here, there's gourmet food in every neighborhood. And even in Rockville. Yeah. Yeah, that was usually home cooking for us. But Bob, you're right. Vienna, see, we consider that our town. Vienna, Virginia is our town. Absolutely. The restaurants out there are unbelievable. Alexandria now has become a fashion area. Can you believe old Alexandria? Yeah. Stoddy, old Virginia, Confederate.
Alexandria changed dramatically.
Well, think about this. We've gone from being a government town. We have every major law firm here. We have all the associations. One thing that people, and I used to pitch this in one of our business with investors, we are the hospitality capital of the U.S. I mean, we have Hilton, Marriott, Choice. We have all the major hotel REITs are centered here. With Amazon announcing that they're putting part of their second headquarters here. I mean, it is just really, it's so positive for our area.
Well, Bob, I see it and feel it through the newspaper business because I have been somewhat of a fan of the Washington Post for my life because that was the alternative. The Star. I worked for the Washington Star. Great newspaper. Washington Post, a great newspaper. I don't agree with them all the time politically, but it's such a necessary thing. What Bezos has done now is buy that property and put it back on its feet. I know through what Howard Baumstein has done with real estate. It's right there. You see it on Sunday in the Washington Post.
Yeah, I still, it's funny. I subscribed to the Washington Post even when I was in college, and I still read it every morning today, and I'm still on the paper version. And I'm with you.
You're a rarity. You know that.
I know. Well, in a lot of areas, in a lot of categories, Andy. But you think about the writers that came through there, and people like Tony Kornheiser, who's in our area, and Sally Quinn when she wrote the style section, which was unheard of. That was trailblazing at that time. Now today, social media.
Bradley named it that. Bradley named it style. He said it sounds better than what they wanted to call it. He said I like style. That was the name.
Right.
50 years ago.
Well, I was going to say, think about that. Most of social media today is style and fashion and entertainment and media.
Bradley,
and
brilliant editor.
Yeah,
and he kept that paper on its toes, and he watched our talent. But Bob, you've seen it grow. I mean, where are we going? Where does it stop? Well, for the Rand Company, you got a lot of business coming.
We do.
They're coming to town.
We do. We're very, very excited about the prospects of our business going forward. And when you think about it, and Andy, you know this from living here for so many years, the city has a height limitation. So we can't go up 80 stories. We can't build higher. We have to spread out as we go. So you see a lot more horizontal growth. And that's really what's brought in some of these great neighborhoods. As we talked about the wharf and down by the ballpark, and you can live near the ballpark. I mean, if you lived in Chicago and you could live near Wrigley Park, I mean, how great is that? And now we have that offering in our city that we didn't have before.
Comiskey Park.
The hope is, and the Redskins can ultimately move back into a place where they're accessible.
Well, we grew up at RFK.
Yes.
We grew up Griffith Stadium. When the Redskins used to play at Griffith Stadium, where I started with them with Jim Gibbons that we were talking about, and to see what they have done for our town, and I hope they'll continue to do it. But the Rand Corporation has done it too, and Linda, I know, has done a lot of great things. And she's so fortunate to have you, Bob.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andy. And
you bring a lot of ghosts with you, and
well,
people got to remember our ghosts.
Yeah,
but our ghosts are natural, Bob.
Yeah, that's true. But just one last thing on the business piece. When Andy, it's funny when you see kind of the central business district and that a lot of these buildings that were built in the '60s are coming up on beyond their useful life. So we really see there's a real opportunity to do renovation work and repositioning of office buildings, and certainly to continue with interior build-out, which is really our fastball.
One of the places you mentioned casually was the 14th Street corridor.
Yes.
That to me is unbelievable. It's exploded.
It really has, and it's offered people, a new place to live in the city.
It's our town. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and you're right on a major corridor for transportation. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at what, the city has bike lanes. Would you have ever expected, I don't expect to see Andy on a bike anytime soon.
Stolen bikes. We had a lot of stolen bikes in our town. You don't have to steal a bike anymore because they got they can rent them.
That's right. That's right. And they have these electric scooters, and the way that people interact and quality of life is so important these days.
Well, Bob, just having you, you're such a very important part of our history of WMAL, and you bring so many memories that are popping in my mind all the time. But Janice and I are just so important, feel you're so important, and are flattered that you wanted to be on our town. We got people standing in line, Milko, to get on the show. We got people standing in line to get off the show.
I was wondering what the line was out on the sidewalk when I came in. Had I known.
Donuts.
But I have to tell you, Andy and Jess, it really is the highlight of a week, a month, or whatever, probably my year to be here with both of you, and to be here where actually I used to come here to work. This is home, and we talked about. Not forgetting where you came from, and I don't forget that.
No,
not
you can't,
for a second.
Bob.
not for a second.
We had a thing I was telling Janice about it. Somebody we made the paper with it. One day they used to have this Martha's table, would drive around for coffee and donuts. And one time somebody spotted Brotman and I standing in line for coffee and donuts on the street in Connecticut Avenue. I'll never forget that. We were walking by, it was cold, and the guy said, you want a cup of coffee? We got in line. Yeah. That's what America, that's our town,
Hey,
Bob.
Andy, one person we do need to bring up, because as we've tied through all this WMAL and the Redskins and even commercial real estate.
That's right.
And a guy that did the color commentary for Maryland football is Pete Wysocki. And I was looking I have a great picture of Pete and myself that I wanted to bring in today, and, I couldn't find it. Of course I couldn't find it. But, when I came here, Pete was here too. And he was doing color commentary with Johnny back on the football, and obviously being an ex-Redskin.
American Football League, if you remember.
Yeah,
I got in trouble with Mr. Cook with that one, but Pete was such a big part of what we were here, because he was involved in everything.
I would never
loyalty.
Oh my God, and I could never forget. You would drive, anywhere with Pete, and he would be about 8 different characters in one. He could mimic people or do these things and tell jokes. And if you remember, there was I don't know if it was a celebrity comedy contest or something downtown.
Absolutely, downtown. Archibald's or someplace.
He won it several times, with his stand-up comedy routine.
And he didn't write anything. It was all out of
No, he was so funny.
We had a man on here that used to ride bikes with him named Tom Quinn. They used to bikers, That was a big part of Pete's life when he got older. He was riding those motorcycles all over, but...
He was also an artist, He had that.
I
think that's
man.
Where he got his creative
my God.
sense. And you remember back then, and I know you're one of your best friends of Sonny Jurgensen. I mean, a lot of the Redskins that stayed in the area, you don't see that with pro sports so much anymore, where somebody spends their career with the team and then after they leave the team, they stay in the community. And we were very fortunate to have Pete in our community.
Tell me about it.
Both in broadcast, in WMAL, and then he went to commercial real estate. And I was in commercial real estate with Oliver Carr, and Pete and I would get together and have coffee, and
I used to see you guys at meetings and things. One of the things that I felt was so important was the loyalty we had to the company and to. Well, a lot of people left when I left, Bob. And it just happens.
Yeah.
It's called maturity. Things change. I went to another world, and the people that worked here went and left. Ernie, they all didn't want to be here anymore because the magic was gone. I wasn't the magic. Everybody was. And we were all in it together.
You might say that, but you were the leader of the magic. You may have said, a credit where credit's due. The people were an integral part of it. Janice, I mentioned, Tricia Zigarelli and Joe Godfrey, Jeffrey Myers and Mike Evans. And,
you remember the names?
Here I am, 30 or 40. I remember these. I remember everybody, and they had
John
such
Matthews, who's still here.
John Matthews, it was so nice to see him today, and all of those people truly impacted my life. Andy, I learned a little bit of something from everybody.
Everybody,
and I tried to take all the good stuff and put it in the blender and drink from that.
Well, you've done a great job, Bob. You've had a wonderful career, and I hope that you're as successful as you have been, because Linda needs you. Obviously, she wouldn't have hired you.
Well, with Linda's successes, not being a success is not an option. I know that's a double negative, but the pressure's on, and it's some big shoes to fill.
I'll never forget one time Brotman redid his office and didn't use Linda.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Oh, was she mad? Oh, she was furious. She should have been. He didn't even think about it.
Well, it's funny with Charlie, with all his pictures of celebrities on the wall. It might have taken a year just to get the pictures down.
Oh my God! He didn't miss anybody, did he?
No, he was just what an outstanding guy.
He's still in our life, and we love him, and
we
love you too, Milko. You're a big part of WMAL's success, and all those years have changed you and changed me and changed Tony. Tony's now big. I remember going to a golf tournament and somebody said, "Who's that guy with Tony Renaud?" It was, what's his name? I told you about it. He adopted somebody else. He used to adopt celebrities.
Was it Fred Funk?
No, Fred Couples.
Freddie Couples.
Yeah.
Freddie Couples.
Freddie Couples.
Yeah,
that's his
true.
new man.
Oh, they're big buddies, and Tony.
Tony
as I
picked
said,
him up, baby.
The way relationships, and I'm never surprised at a name. It's funny when people drop names. It's kind of name dropping, But with Tony, if he mentions a name, he really knows that person.
No
and
question.
he has a relationship with him. It's not a bunch of hooey. He really does.
Bob, you and I grew up in the era. Nobody was bigger than Frank Sinatra. Nobody. And Tony was right there.
Oh, yeah.
He had a show. What was it called? Sinatra and Friends?
Sinatra and Friends.
He
And
had jackets made. I had the jacket made, Sinatra and Friends. And Janice and I were in Dublin for a Hardner Weaver for St. Paddy's Day weekend. And I was wearing my jacket, and we went somewhere on a train out of Dublin, and we walk into a pub, and it's a wedding party going on. They saw my jacket. They thought I was with Frank. So we didn't change him. See, I said, no, Frank, very well. He's not here. He's back at the hotel. Remember, they took us into the party.
Did you ask, can we get a table for 4 right over here in the corner?
There was only 2 of us. I mean, they just did, all these Irishmen, they went nuts to think we were connected with Frank.
Yeah.
All of it because of Tony Renaud.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful session with you, Milko. I wish you nothing but complete success. You already had it. I don't know what more you can do. But you got a lot of money, babe. I hope you're sending some to Maryland.
Absolutely. I do serve in my capacity on University System Maryland Foundation, so I'd like to give back where I can. That's something else.
on that with you?
He's not on that, but I do talk to Tom about
Tom is
Maryland.
in something, I know.
Yeah, he's
been on Our Town.
Yeah. Well, he was
a great guy.
Quite a talent, and there's a guy who's had an outstanding career in many different aspects.
Oh, yeah, he had. Well, Bob Milkovich, thank you for being you, and thank you for being on Our Town, and I know you're going to be great with Linda, and let's stay in touch.
Well, I just have so much love and respect for you and Janice, and I just am so happy to be here and
Bob,
to be a part of your life for.
It is.
I don't even want to say how many years. It's just too many years, but it's been so. It's been so much fun. It really has.
40.
About 40
years.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days, Bobby. Then are the good old days, Ken? Today. This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town with Bob Milkovich.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 4, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.